What's up guys, Nick here. What I have here in front of me is a 1995 Dodge Ram 1500. This truck was wrecked about 10 years ago with 150,000 miles and it had a brand new transmission put on it right before the wreck. In this video, we're going to get the truck to run, make sure it's in good health, pull the engine out of this, and then we're going to be sticking it in a 1955 Plymouth Plaza two-door station wagon on an extremely tight budget. My plan is to part the truck out and get the entire swap to as close to $0 as possible, and I will be giving a price breakdown at the end of the video series. .318 LA, like in these old darts and D150s and all the old Mopars, I think like from the 70s to 80s. That block was a 318 and most of the components fit the newer 90s Magnum trucks. So this is what I got to make it work. I got an oil pan chrome off of a 360 LA. We got a chrome air cleaner. We've got a performance starter so we can get it to spin faster. We got all of our gaskets. So I have a 4-barrel intake, which should bolt straight to that Magnum. We have an Edelbrock carburetor, we have a Holley carburetor. We're gonna do some testing on that and see which one is better. The Edelbrock's better for street, a Holley's better for performance. We got our water neck, we've got our voltage regulator to make the original alternator on the 5.2 work. We have a HEI distributor, so we're not gonna do points. It should drop right in. That's made for an LA and it should drop right into our Magnum. We have a aluminum radiator. From the measurements that I got, this should work. It's for a 1955 to 57 Chevy and it has a transcooler, so we should be able to cut the lines and hook the lines up. And yeah, let me show you guys what it's going in. All right, so here it is. It's a 1955 Plymouth Plaza station wagon. I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 months ago, I bought this car and it was all rusted. It was like painted rust brown primer and it had a locked up flathead in it. I got it running and driving. I'll put the link to the video right here or in the description and you guys can see me getting that thing running. This paint job is actually like a $180 Rust-Oleum paint job with a clear coat. So I basically sanded it and painted it and then cleared it with just Rust-Oleum spray cans, and I gave it kind of a patina look. But we got some really cool Craigers, and let me show you the rear end that we're going to be putting under this thing. We got a 8.8 Ford rear end that is the perfect size. It's 59 inches. It should sit right underneath that Plymouth. The only thing I should have to do is put my perches on, and then we need to, well, it came with the U-joint, so I'll need to clean that up and then probably take the drive shaft off of the Dodge Ram, cut it and make it work on there. I'm gonna put a price breakdown of everything that I bought, the total cost with the truck, and then what I ended up selling all the parts for, subtract that, and that'll give me a total price. So far right now, with the truck and all of the parts, I'm a little over $1,000 and I've only sold a couple pieces. I know I can probably get 300 for the bed, 150 for the doors. So, all right, let's get started. So first things first, I needed to remove everything that we did not need that wasn't going to be required. I'm not going to do air conditioning, so I went ahead and just cut the lines. Any little sensor, the EGR valve, none of that stuff needs to be. We're going purely 100% just old school. So I'm definitely going to have to buy a water pump since the truck was hit on this passenger corner. Looked like the radiator must have pushed into it and it's rubbing. I didn't see any cracks. Hopefully it just pushed that water pump over. Let's talk about what we do need and what we don't need. So since we are going with a carburetor, we don't need any of this electronic crap. So I went ahead and pulled the harness off of all of the injectors, moved it out of the way, cut it off. Any of the little sensors and stuff like that, cut it off, move it away. Basically all we're going to need to do is bolt it and then hook up our throttle cable. So I got the manifold unbolted. To be able to get the manifold off, you have to remove this bracket. So there's this bolt here, bolt there, bolt here, bolt here, bolt here, bolt here, and then you should be able to move the bracket out of the way. I removed the AC compressor. Since I'm not gonna have AC in this car, I'm thinking I'm probably just gonna cut this section off. That way every time, if I ever want to service the intake, I don't have to remove the entire bracket. I can just have this alternator bracket pulley on there and then cut the compressor section off. And then our power steering, we're not gonna have power steering, but we're gonna need the pulley because they only make 2 belts. They make a belt with air conditioning and then without air conditioning. So we're gonna have to leave this on there, and maybe, I don't know, I'm gonna have to figure up if I can either find a belt without power steering or somehow make it where this pulley is just on a bearing and then remove the power steering, because it'll be kind of like an idler. Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off, and then we'll go ahead and yank the kegger off of it, get ready to mount our 4-barrel intake. I went ahead and threw it in my chop saw and just cut that section off. So now we'll only have the alternator mount. So the dash on this truck reads 150,000 miles, and I'm assuming it's probably original, because like this hose, this never came off, the water pumps never came off. It's clean because I pressure washed it, but I ordered a new water pump for like 30 bucks. I'll add that to the budget build list. Somebody didn't change their oil very often. This thing is pretty grimy and black. It shouldn't look like that. It should be clean, look like metal. So that's unfortunate, but I'm still gonna run it because I don't care. Look at all this junk. But I'll go ahead and shop back it out, get our gasket surfaces cleaned up, drop in our HEI distributor, bolt it on. We'll see if this sucker will fire up and run. I'm just trying to hear and listen to see if I hear any noises. Let it get hot. If it sounds good cold, it sounds good hot, boom, we're good to go. All right, so I got the gasket surface all cleaned up. I went ahead and hit it with a wire wheel, hit it with some carburetor cleaner, clean the intake up as best as I could. It's really grimy. And then I hit each one of these lifters and down into the intake with some PB blaster. And I'm gonna go ahead and see if the engine turns over full 360. Yep. I can already hear compression. Extension. Oh yeah, we got hella compression. Man, this thing has compression, doesn't it? That's crazy. Sounds like there might be water in the cylinders. So I think I need to pull the plugs. I forgot to drop my distributor back in before I started turning the engine over. So what I'm gonna have to do is, I got my camera down in the #1 cylinder. I'm gonna turn the engine over, and then once I see the piston come all the way to the top and stop, that's where I'm gonna face my first spark plug on my rotor on my engine, just on the distributor. So basically I gotta bring it to top dead, drop the distributor where it's facing #1, and that's where I can start my plugs. So now that our #1 cylinder is at top dead center, go ahead and take our distributor, and that's where we'll start #1 right there. I think we have it all set up. We have our gasket in place, in pieces with some of the right stuff RTV. This stuff right here, it's what was recommended. I'm gonna go ahead and gently set the intake on, bolt it down, go in my torque sequence, which is middle, work your way out. All right, so I got all the bolts torqued down, getting ready to put the thermostat neck on, and already ran into my first sketchy problem with the Chinese part. So this intake is just like a generic Chinese manifold. I think I paid like 180, 200 bucks for it, but look at the thermostat. I mean, see on the Magnum intake, it sits right on there. I don't know, I guess I'll just run it without a thermostat for now, until I can find a bigger thermostat. All right, now that that's all somewhat buttoned up, we need to throw our starter on it. I got all the spark plugs taken out, give it a couple revolutions, let it blow all that crap out, PB blaster and water, and then we can shoot the plugs back in it, put 12 volts to the coil, and see if it'll light off and idle for a second. All right, I got the starter put on, if y'all can see that. So now got my battery hooked up, my positive going straight to the starter, and then here's our solenoid wire spinning around a couple times, and see how fast that performance starter spins. I'll go ahead and put the plugs back in, put power to our HEI, see if we can get it to light off. I went ahead and put brand new spark plugs in it, just because. Used NGK G-Power 7090 platinum plug. Now all I should have to do is put power, because this is a 2-wire distributor. I got my coil, just put power to the coil. I don't have the belt on, so I don't have to worry about anything tearing my limbs off. I think I have it in park. Pretty sure I do. Okay, it runs. Awesome. That is great news. It sounds really good. Let me see if I can get it to run a little bit. I really don't like running on this brake parts cleaner, but let me see if I can get it to run a little bit longer. Oh yeah, I forgot about the transmission lines. Dang it. We got fluid blowing out of our transmission lines. Undid the drive shaft. I got it removed. It was only 4 bolts on the rear end, and it slides right out. I got the transmission mount unbolted, disconnected, saved all the hardware, got the shift lever disconnected. Looks like all my wiring got out of the way. I got my motor mounts undid. So now I'm gonna go ahead and pull it. What I'm gonna do is So I need to move the car into the shop so I can pull the front clip off and then pull the motor and transmission. Problem is, I used the spark plugs and a bunch of random parts on the 51. I pulled them off of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and I think it was just, it might have been just the plug wires. I'll go ahead, or the plugs. Go ahead and throw those, take the plugs off the 51, move them back over, see if I can get this thing to fire up and drive into the shop. If y'all watched the Will It Run on that 51 Plymouth, you know how bad it smoked. And look at those spark plugs. These were brand new. I mean, I just put them in this 55, and there's not even a gap anymore. So go ahead and spray these down with some carb cleaner. Just throw them in, see if we can get some fire. All right, so now that the Plymouth is in the shop, what I need to do is remove the hood. I went ahead and took some white spray paint, hit it, that way I can line it back up when I put it back together. And I need to remove this front clip. But before we remove the front clip, I need to take some measurements. So, because I'm not gonna have any reference points as far as the fender wells and then the grill from, you know, from front to back, how far forward or backward to put the engine. I don't wanna have any clearance issues. I am going to put an electric fan. I ordered that, it came in, it was like 50 bucks. I know some guys are probably gonna complain, you know, just use the mechanical, use the clutch fan. Well, you know, it's my car, so I'm gonna put it as far back as I can get it is what I'm gonna end up doing, and as far down. And I have that chrome oil pan, so we'll see if I can use the stock oil pan, if our steering will clear. All right, so the hood's off. So there's 8 bolts, 2 here, 2 here, 2 there, 2 there. I think it was like an 11 millimeter. 4 of the 8 bolts broke. And when I say broke, I mean I put heat on them, got them really, really hot, barely turned it, and it just broke right off. So that's a really good sign. I bet you all the rest of the bolts are probably going to be really good, and they'll probably just, we barely have to turn them and they'll just fall off for us. Let me go ahead and figure out how to remove this clip. I'll get all the bolts loose and then I'll show you guys. Went ahead and removed the bumper. I got the radiator removed. 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, upper hose, lower hose, cake. Bumper, 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, removed. Now, front clip. This car is crazy easy. I wired this car, as you can tell by my professional green, white, and yellow wiring. Pretty much just disconnect the lights, ignition, starter, lay it back, and then you have 2 bolts, 2 big giant bolts right up under here, right there. Undo those, and then on each side of the fender you got a bolt here, bolt here, and then 1 bolt on the bottom side, and then it's loose. Now go ahead and get my wife, and hopefully she can pick it up. Oh, we got to go over the tires.
I thought it wasn't going to be heavy. Alright, so...
Grab from the front.
I can't. I have little arms.
Alright guys, here's where we're at. I can tell you this one thing. These cars are super easy to do a V8 swap on. There's so much room. That front clip comes off beautifully. There's barely anything in the way. Of course, once we put the V8 in there, there's going to be a lot in the way. So here's what I've done so far. I got the drive shaft removed. I got the motor mounts unbolt, which is very weird. The motor mount is literally just a bar, like a horseshoe bar in the front with 4 bolts. And then there's 2 bolts for the transmission, 1 there and then 1 on the opposite side. And took a Sawzall to my coolant lines. I still need to Sawzall that coolant line. And then of course your linkage for the throttle, oil pressure, and then your coolant. So I'm gonna go ahead and Sawzall this last coolant line, and we'll yank it out, roll the car out of here, and then put the pressure washer to it, clean it all up. That way we can get ready to be painted, and then mock up the V8. This is actually a really good engine, even though it was locked up. The only problem I had with it, you know, it ran good, had good compression and everything. The front, the crankshaft seal, pulley, whatever you want to call it,
leaked really bad. I mean, it leaked to the point where it was just slinging oil all over the place. But other than that, oil pan doesn't leak too bad. It's in real good shape. You could probably just clean it up, paint it, and stick it in something. Now, transmission, this is what's awesome about this whole setup. This is an Borg-Warner 3-speed with overdrive. You can cruise on the highway. Like, so you could do like 65, which back in 1955 was pretty insane. Do 65 on the highway, cruising like, you know, 2,000, 2,200 RPM. And the kickdown solenoid is right here. So it would basically hook up to the throttle. You'd have a solenoid, and then if you floored it and you wanted to pass somebody, it would kick out of overdrive and you could go around them. And there was a pull cable on the dash. So once you got up to a certain speed, you wanted to cruise, you pulled that cable out, and if you wanted to pass somebody and you floored it, it would pop it in. It would pop the overdrive off for you, and then when you want to go back into it, you just pull the cable back out. So I think this is worth about 1,200 bucks. I'm gonna add that. If I sell it, I might put this in the 51. I don't know yet. I'm haven't decided what I want to do, but I do know that this thing is worth some scratch, and it works really good. I haven't tested the overdrive, but you know, you could rebuild it. Like all those solenoids and stuff, the relay and the solenoid, all that stuff is worth money. So alrighty, let me go ahead and drop the motor on the trailer, back the car out, drop the motor on the trailer, get all this pressure washed. I figured you guys would find this interesting. The engine that came out of that 55 has a casting on it. It says 9/5/47, and I looked it up. That's the date that the block was manufactured, which means this engine was replaced. And then the fact that it has an overdrive transmission means that was off of a different car probably. So dash says 70-something thousand. Who knows? The car may have had 2 engines within 70-something thousand, or may have had 2 engines within 170-something thousand. I'm gonna go ahead and scuff up that firewall and shoot it with 2 half cans of Rust-Oleum. Firewall's all painted, looking pretty. I just kind of half-butt scuffed it and sanded it. It's probably going to flake, but at least it's half butt done, and it'll flake a little bit off. I'd rather have a little bit flaking off than just have not done it at all and then look back and go, man, why didn't I paint that firewall? So I'd rather do it half butt now than just not do it at all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and tape some of these wires up, and then I'm going to cut the transmission cross member out, because it has to go. I mean, there's just no way that is going to fit in there and drop down low enough. Plus, I still don't know if we're going to be able to use the rear sump off of that, but I'm going to try to use the rear sump off of it. If not, I'll throw that chrome mid sump in there. All right, I got the cross member out. I actually ended up taking a Sawzall with a thick metal blade I got from Ace Hardware. It cut it right off, like super easy. That's the piece right there. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is, I think everything is, I'm sure I'm missing something, but never done this before. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is what I'm gonna go ahead and do, if I can talk, is pick the motor up. I'm gonna set it in place. I don't know, maybe put some jack stands in there or something, get it kind of mocked up, and get my engine as far back as I can get it, possibly, potentially, if the oil pan clears, and then start setting my angle and getting it mocked up so I can figure out what I'm going to do with motor mounts. So let me go ahead and stab it in place, show you guys what I come up with. All right, so it's late at night. I'm going to go ahead and call this part 1. We got the engine in. It's not sitting perfect, but here's the first couple issues we're running into. The stock motor mounts for the 95 Dodge Ram are way too big. I mean, they're really far out, and they're like giant barrels. That's the first problem. You can see that the engine has a drastic tilt, so I need to get the front down a little bit. There needs to be just a slight tilt for our pinion angle, but I want to get it down as far as I can and then barely tilt it. That way we got enough room on the trans tunnel. Trans touching a little bit. So I need to order some motor mounts. I'm going to do some research and figure out if I need to use Dodge Dakota mounts, or maybe the old LA mounts will work on it, which would be really awesome. I think that's what this is right here. I think that's an LA mount. Now we'll be able to get it down really far and back further. Our steering is an issue. We're really close. I mean, we're touching right here. I think we're shifted over this way. So once I get those mounts removed, when I get the LA mounts, I can mock it up a little bit better. And then the other issue, I was going to try to use the stock oil pan off of the 95 Ram, which is a rear sump. You can see this, just like how I was thinking when I measured it, it's going to be dead in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and put the chrome oil pan on it, which is more of a front sump. It's like a front mid sump, and then I have the pickup for it. So unfortunately I'm gonna have to pull the engine out. I was getting in a hurry. You know what happens when you get into a hurry, start assuming things. So what I'm gonna do for right now is I'm gonna go ahead and order a bunch of parts and put this video out. But all of this progress right here, I think took about 3 or 4 days. So from the time I put the intake, distributor, carburetor on the Magnum, on the 95 Ram, got it to fire up, pulled it out, pulled the front clip off of this, pulled the engine out, and then had this engine sitting in there. Yeah, it was about 3 days. Not full days, but you know, it's really not that bad. These are really easy to, these old Plymouths are really easy. They'd make really cool swap cars. I don't know why guys aren't swapping more of them. All right, so that's part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. That should be sometime next week. And I'm pretty much just ready to drive this thing around the block already. So peace out.